Dinar shift. This is the story that will redefine the narrative for all who follow the evolving economic landscape of Iraq. For 2 decades, a profound and deliberate silence has blanketed one of the most critical aspects of Iraq's financial system, the official exchange rate of the dinar. This silence, maintained by the nation's formal record-keeper, the Iraqi Gazette, was a hallmark of a deeply opaque system. Now, in a development that can only be described as seismic, that 20-year wall of silence has not only been breached but utterly shattered. The Iraqi Gazette, the definitive, authoritative publication for all government laws, regulations, and official decisions, has, for the first time in an entire generation, openly and explicitly addressed the currency exchange rate. This singular, unprecedented act is not merely a piece of news, it is a foundational shift in how Iraq's financial authorities communicate with the world. This official acknowledgement is of colossal significance, because the Gazette is the ultimate source of documented truth within the Iraqi state apparatus. When this body speaks, it is not merely reporting a story, it is making a formal record of a shift in state policy or intent. The information published reveals that the Central Bank of Iraq, CBI, is actively engaged in a comprehensive review of the current economic conditions and is simultaneously involved in high-level discussions concerning potential significant adjustments to the official exchange rate. To fully grasp the magnitude of this, one must understand the Gazette's traditional role. It has been a black hole on this specific topic, treating the exchange rate as a subject completely outside the bounds of public formal discussion. The disclosure that the CBI is assessing the economy and contemplating changes to the currency's valuation is a direct, concrete piece of official disclosure. This is not political maneuvering, unverified rumor, or anonymous speculation intended to sway short-term public sentiment. Instead, it is an authoritative statement originating from the institution that forms the legal and procedural bedrock of Iraqi governance. The long-standing status quo, the unspoken rule that the exchange rate was not to be discussed in the official public record, is officially under review. This marks the moment when the conversation about the dinar's value moves from the shadows of informal markets and speculation into the bright, formal territory of state communication. Omar, a trusted source with confirmed operational visibility, delivered the stunning confirmation that this formal information was indeed published in the Gazette. He emphasized the sheer historical anomaly of this event. Throughout the last 2 decades, a period marked by profound economic shifts, international compliance challenges, and structural reconstruction, the Gazette remained completely mute on the exchange rate. This was a policy of deliberate opacity in a country where the currency's value profoundly impacts daily life, including the cost of imports, the price of goods, domestic commerce, and the calculation of salaries. That sustained silence has now been replaced by a clear, formal statement that economic conditions are under intense review, and that updates will follow. The implications of this shift towards transparency are profound, adding an undeniable, powerful piece to the mosaic of imminent monetary reform. The Gazette's involvement is far more than simple reporting. It strategically aligns with the broader, systematic financial literacy and monetary education campaign known internally as Astrolask. This campaign has been explicitly designed by monetary authorities to methodically prepare Iraqi citizens for the structural reforms that are now approaching. The analysis holds true. Once the most politically insulated, authoritative publication in the country becomes a channel for educating the public on currency mechanics and exchange rate considerations, it confirms that the reform process is not only in full motion but is being driven by legitimate central monetary authorities. The reason the Gazette is such a critical conduit is its reputation for neutrality and authority. It operates outside the direct control of political factions or external actors who might profit from the instability that flourishes in black market currency operations. The central bank's decision to use this specific, politically insulated platform confirms an institutional move to control the national financial narrative. They are undertaking a deliberate, step-by-step preparation of the citizenry for what they know is on the horizon. No national monetary authority undertakes a sweeping, comprehensive education campaign like Astrolask unless a major structural change is imminent. Nor would they follow it up with an unprecedented exchange rate acknowledgement unless the next phase was actively approaching. This calculated transparency is a sophisticated exercise in expectation management and a strategy for protecting the economy from destabilization during a major transition. It is designed to weaken the influence of the black market, cut off illegal profiteers who thrive on information asymmetry, and steer the entire population toward one unified official understanding of the currency's trajectory. What the public is witnessing is a deliberate strategic pivot away from a financial environment built on secrecy and toward one rooted in a transparent, modernized framework. The message is clear: the institutions of state are seizing control of the financial conversation and preparing for a formal, comprehensive policy change. The Gazette's statement that the Central Bank of Iraq is reviewing economic conditions might sound subtle in casual prose, but in the specific, calibrated language of monetary policy, it is a statement of tremendous weight. It signals that the institution is engaged in the final, critical stages of preparation. Reserve calculations are being finalized, non-oil revenue trends are being rigorously analyzed, compliance metrics are being verified, and every prerequisite required before initiating a major exchange rate adjustment is under final assessment. This is not the beginning of a process. This is the home stretch of economic due diligence. The commentary in the Gazette is a coded, authoritative message that the central bank is nearing its final preparatory actions. For every individual who has followed this long, complex journey, this official documentation provides an irrefutable public reference point. It is formal proof that the internal financial decision-making process has definitively transitioned into its final preparatory phase. Furthermore, the geopolitical implications woven into this announcement are substantial. When the Gazette publishes financial signals that bypass known political factions notorious for attempting to interfere with sensitive monetary policy, it is a potent demonstration of the reassertion of national sovereignty. The message being broadcast is that Iraq's financial future is controlled by its legal sovereign institutions, not by political influencers, shadow markets, or external fora. GN actors. By standardizing the exchange rate conversation and placing it in a public, transparent forum, the central bank is actively stripping the black market of the influence it once leveraged from ambiguity. This action places the control of monetary policy firmly back into the hands of the state. It is simultaneously a political and an economic victory, serving to reinforce long-term stability and strengthening the credibility of the dinar's long-term trajectory. For those who have been tracking this process for years, the Gazette's unprecedented announcement is validation of the highest order. It fundamentally moves the entire narrative from the realm of if a change will occur to the concrete question of when, and that time frame is now visibly drawing closer. The absence of official, high-level commentary has historically been the biggest source of skepticism surrounding the potential for monetary reform. That fundamental barrier has now been dissolved entirely. The government, through its official mouthpiece, has spoken. The central bank has formally signaled its intent. The Gazette has documented the process. There is now an undeniable official public reference point that can be cited, analyzed, and used as a benchmark for all future developments. This brings the focus back to the factor of timing, which analysts have consistently highlighted. While no precise date for a monetary transition can ever be given outside of an official immediate announcement, the convergence of all current signals is remarkable. The Gazette's unprecedented acknowledgement, the ongoing nationwide monetary education campaign, the finalized budgets, the sustained compliance upgrades, all of these foundational elements fit seamlessly into a clear preparation timeline. This operational roadmap leads directly toward the final quarter of the year as a window of intense activity. The central bank would not initiate a broad public education wave, nor would it break a 2-decade-long official silence unless the activation phase was rapidly approaching. The preparation itself is the most powerful signal available. The logistical runway is cleared, institutional systems are running, and the public is being primed. This Gazette announcement is one of the clearest signs yet of this final countdown stage. The recent evolution in institutional transparency marks a pivotal turning point in how modern financial authorities communicate with their citizens during periods of systemic reform. Central banks globally often struggle to balance operational confidentiality with the need for public reassurance, frequently erring on the side of silence to protect sensitive procedures. However, when an institution deliberately executes a strategic shift toward broad, coordinated public messaging, especially utilizing its most official channels, it reveals more than just surface information. It signifies a strategic decision to bring the public directly into the information loop, thereby significantly reducing uncertainty, limiting external speculation, and strengthening the entire institutional narrative against the backdrop of change. When a central bank expands educational campaigns, significantly enhances financial literacy programs, or, most critically, utilizes state-backed publications like the Gazette to outline the existence of ongoing reforms, it is engaging in more than a mere public relations exercise. It is actively asserting control over the psychological dimension of economic stability. Such decisive moves are carefully designed to preempt the spread of misinformation, to weaken the grip of informal markets, and to suppress the destabilizing rumors that naturally thrive in an environment devoid of clarity. This shift signals a desire for a population that is not only aware of impending policy changes but is also mentally and conceptually prepared for them. It represents a deliberate, high-level restructuring of the entire informational environment, methodically calibrating public expectations and reinforcing trust in state institutions. Transparency in the context of major economic reform is not a passive virtue. It is an active, formidable tool of economic governance. It serves as a carefully engineered mechanism designed to strengthen the nation's financial resilience against internal and external shocks. When a central bank publicly announces that it is undertaking a comprehensive review of economic conditions, the language might appear overly technical or even understated to the layperson. However, within the specialized world of monetary governance, this specific phrasing carries considerable formal weight. It signals that policymakers are not merely engaging in a routine cyclical evaluation but are instead undertaking a high-resolution, deep-dive assessment of macroeconomic fundamentals and readiness for change. These public reviews typically encompass a thorough battery of tests, reserve adequacy tests, detailed liquidity flow analyses, checks for fiscal monetary alignment, sectoral performance measurements, and system-wide compliance verification across the entire banking ecosystem. These tasks, far from being symbolic, form the essential backbone of responsible monetary stewardship. They ensure that the institution fully understands every variable that could influence any future decision, which is absolutely vital in environments where comprehensive structural reform, modernization, or structural transition is underway. When these specific preparatory activities are acknowledged publicly, it reflects an institution that is sufficiently confident in its methodologies to disclose its internal processes without any fear of inadvertently destabilizing the market. This level of disclosure tells observers, both domestic and international, that policymakers believe the public is now ready, and needs, to understand that major economic decisions are grounded strictly in measurable data and established procedures rather than being subject to political whims or external pressure. Such measured transparency contributes significantly to cultivating an informed citizenry, reinforcing the formal legitimacy of the institution and building the foundation of trust that will be essential for successfully navigating any future policy adjustments. In this context, the economic review process becomes far more than just a technical exercise. It stands as a clear milestone of institutional credibility and comprehensive preparedness for the next structural phase. One of the most powerful signals a central bank can ever send is the overt assertion of its independence from short-term political interference. When official publications begin communicating core policy rationale directly to the public, deliberately bypassing partisan structures, influential interest groups, or powerful intermediaries, it represents a decisive reclamation of sovereign monetary authority. This strategic shift is not accidental or coincidental. It is a calculated and deliberate reinforcement of the fundamental principle that national monetary stability must reside in the hands of specialized, insulated institutions, far removed from the pressures of short-term political agendas or electoral cycles. By centralizing and formalizing financial communication within legally recognized authoritative outlets like the Gazette, the institution effectively diminishes the influence of informal markets, pervasive rumor networks, and actors who consistently thrive on uncertainty and lack of clarity. This move also communicates a powerful message, both domestically and internationally, that the nation's governance structures are rapidly maturing, that necessary oversight mechanisms are significantly strengthening, and that the crucial separation between technical policy design and political pressure is widening. These developments have far-reaching positive implications, influencing the confidence of foreign investors, shaping the responsible behavior of domestic financial institutions, and setting clear expectations for regulatory enforcement and compliance across the board. When a central bank publicly articulates its strategies or explains its data-driven approach to complex issues, it unequivocally signals that institutional sovereignty is consolidating and strengthening. This fundamental consolidation bolsters both the national currency's overall credibility and the stability of the broader financial system in the long term. A transparent and politically independent central bank is not merely a bureaucratic reality, it is recognized globally as a cornerstone of national economic stability and one of the most formidable indicators of a country's long-term developmental trajectory and modernization. The Gazette's recent historic action is the loudest possible announcement of this strengthening sovereignty. Timelines in the context of complex national economic reform are rarely precise or rigidly fixed, but they serve a critical dual psychological and organizational function. When a government releases detailed multi-year development plans, modernization schedules, compliance roadmaps, or digital infrastructure milestones, they are essentially constructing a narrative architecture that successfully guides public expectations and rigorously aligns institutional priorities toward a shared goal. These formalized timelines are not speculative promises of sudden dramatic financial shifts. Rather, they meticulously outline the logical, sequential progression of comprehensive reforms deemed necessary for achieving sustainable long-term stability and growth. The finalization of budgets, the upgrade of regulatory compliance, transitions to new technologies, and public educational initiatives all represent coordinated, measurable steps within these multi-phase processes. Their synchronization often signals that an economy is entering a decisive and advanced stage, one characterized by systemic integration, deep modernization, and structural recalibration across all key sectors. While the public naturally focuses on specific dates or speculates on immediate outcomes, policymakers view these extensive timelines as the essential scaffolding that is required to support sustainable and durable reform. When several strong institutional signals converge, such as the clear increase in transparency, the demonstrated strengthening of compliance, enhanced public outreach, and the synchronization of legal frameworks, it overwhelmingly suggests that the system is transitioning from a period of intense planning into the decisive stage of execution. This does not necessarily imply an abrupt, sudden change, but it powerfully highlights the culmination of years of meticulous groundwork that has been systematically executed by multiple specialized institutions. The emphasis, therefore, must shift away from predicting a specific event and toward the clear recognition that coordinated structural reform itself is the most powerful indicator of national economic momentum and sovereign intent. These meticulously planned timelines are less about waiting for one dramatic moment and are far more about understanding the accelerating trajectory of profound institutional transformation and systemic maturation. Every new development, from the modernization of electronic banking to the latest international compliance upgrades and coordinated government communications, perfectly fits into a meticulously structured, overarching transformation strategy. True sovereign monetary reform is fundamentally a process that is never spontaneous or isolated. It imperatively requires meticulously calibrated alignment across all regulatory systems, consistent public-facing education, robust digital infrastructure, thorough legal harmonization, and the clear, unambiguous articulation of government intent and commitment. When all of these foundational pieces move forward together in concert, it signals that a nation is not improvising or reacting to crises, but is instead executing a carefully engineered long-term plan explicitly designed to elevate transparency, strengthen official oversight, and proactively reduce all systemic vulnerabilities. The inclusion of the Gazette in this communication ecosystem is especially significant, not because it hints at a specific speculative outcome, but because it authoritatively confirms that the state is actively unifying its communication channels for a major policy rollout. This level of coordinated action is precisely how major monetary transitions are prepared for and managed in practice by sovereign nations. They are implemented not through sudden, disruptive announcements, but through the gradual, methodical tightening of institutional coordination and clear messaging. What observers are currently witnessing is the decisive emergence of a fully integrated, cohesive policy environment where reforms are communicated deliberately, consistently, and with an increasing, undeniable clarity across all authorized channels. The synchronization of these efforts is, in itself, the most significant signal of progress. Any nation seeking to fundamentally modernize its financial architecture must first and foremost modernize the systems that explain, justify, and legitimize that entire architecture to its citizens and the world. Iraq's current institutional posture demonstrates a deep understanding of this principle, and that is precisely why the visible alignment of its key institutions carries such immense strategic weight. It bears repeating a core fact: the Iraqi Gazette is not a casual news outlet. It is the formal repository of state decisions, holding a stature comparable to the Federal Register in the United States. Consequently, when it makes any reference to monetary considerations or exchange rate reviews, it does so with the full weight of legal and procedural authority. This means that any discussion it publishes regarding exchange-related reviews reflects genuine, formalized governmental engagement, not mere speculation or fleeting rumor, but the official acknowledgement that macroeconomic conditions are actively being examined through a highly structured, lawful process. Crucially, while this action is historic, it does not function as a guarantee or prediction of imminent dramatic change. Rather, its primary significance lies in highlighting the state's commitment to enhanced transparency and its willingness to openly discuss its ongoing economic evaluations and policy considerations. By publicly noting that the central bank is rigorously reviewing economic indicators and is considering the potential use of policy tools, the Gazette powerfully reinforces the legitimacy of established institutional processes. This transparency also significantly reduces the space in which informal black markets can operate to manipulate uncertainty and profit from public ambiguity. This kind of authoritative, clear transparency is a direct structural challenge to the shadow economy. The black market thrives on a lack of clarity, and when citizens begin to receive information consistent from official, authoritative sources, the informal, speculative narratives lose their oxygen and credibility. The true significance of the Gazette's historic involvement is its validation of proper rule-based procedure and its strong reinforcement of the rule-based structure that underlies Iraq's modern monetary governance. The visible, continuous alignment across state institutions, whether it is demonstrated in regulatory reforms, compliance reporting, the implementation of anti-corruption mechanisms, or public communications, marks one of the strongest possible indicators that Iraq's financial governance is profoundly maturing and consolidating. Unified messaging is far more than just a communications strategy. It is a structural milestone that definitively demonstrates that ministries, regulators, and specialized financial authorities are all operating from a single, shared blueprint and common set of goals. This is the practical definition of institutional coherence in nations undergoing complex modernization. Conflicting voices are retreating, coordinated messaging is advancing, and a single authoritative national narrative is steadily taking undeniable shape. This convergence is not the sign of an impending financial shock event. It is the sign of a state that has made a conscious, strategic decision to elevate consistency, procedural adherence, and structural clarity over fragmentation and ambiguity. This visible maturity is, in itself, one of the most vital components required for achieving long-term sustainable economic stability. When institutions cease to contradict one another and instead consistently articulate the same core priorities: transparency, the rule of law, digital integration, compliance with global standards, it signals that the country is confidently stepping into a new era of administrative discipline and institutional control. The foundational message is not that a specific monetary change is necessarily pending on a particular date, but rather that the specialized institutions responsible for making and managing such fundamental changes are finally aligned, coherent, and capable enough to manage them responsibly and sustainably, whenever the optimal conditions for them may occur. The direction of these developments is unmistakable. Iraq's financial governance is rapidly consolidating around a unified, modern, and internationally compliant framework. The Gazette's renewed and explicit engagement with monetary issues functions not as a prediction engine for an outcome, but as a high-level confirmation of a structured process now fully underway. For years, much of Iraq's crucial economic work has taken place in technical committees, regulatory workshops, internal modernization programs, and consultations with international bodies like the IMF, processes that were largely invisible to the public eye. When these structural reforms reach the point where the official state record begins to discuss them openly, it signals that the entire process has definitively entered its public phase of execution. This public phase reform means that institutional accountability simultaneously increases, information becomes standardized and accessible, and citizens gain a far clearer, more authoritative understanding of the deliberate path their economic institutio NS are choosing to take. It is a moment that reflects profound institutional confidence. The state is secure enough in its progress and preparations to speak openly about ongoing evaluations, future possibilities, and its long-term sovereign intentions. The convergence of targeted public education, necessary legal updates, comprehensive banking reforms, and explicit official communication does not point to a specific calendar date. It points to a country that is systematically preparing its entire population for a period of sustained structural economic modernization. The true milestone is not a predicted month or day. The milestone is the unprecedented transparency itself. And in that transparency, Iraq is clearly signaling that it is entering one of the most structurally transformative periods of its entire modern financial history. Every new coordinated development, from electronic banking modernization to international compliance to the latest official communications, fits perfectly into a synchronized strategy that demands coordination across public education, legal frameworks, institutional alignment, and government messaging. Now, with the authoritative Gazette joining that unified coordination, the complete communications framework is fully operational and aligned. It cannot be overstated again. The Iraqi Gazette is the legal equivalent of the Federal Register, and when it speaks, it does so with full legal authority. It's mentioned that the Central Bank of Iraq is reviewing economic conditions and discussing potential adjustments to the exchange rate is not accidental, trivial, or merely decorative. It is a deliberate, meaningful, and formal statement, indicative of high-level movement and sovereign intent. This transparency suffocates the shadow economy by removing the ambiguity it depends on and, simultaneously, strengthens the official legitimacy of the Dinar RV in the eyes of its citizens and the international community. The unified, coordinated messaging across all key institutions remains the strongest possible confirmation that this fundamental monetary reform is entering its final, most public stages. The communications framework is fully aligned, and the chosen direction is now unmistakable.